We can get started here. May I have a mover and a seconder to call the meeting to order? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Moore, that the regular meeting of council of the Township of Springwater of April the 5th, 2023 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Good. And if we could rise, we'll sing our national anthem. This is a suggestion. You might want to tip your screen forward. I guess I'll have to start. Yeah. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest, Council? Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I am calling a pecuniary interest on item 11.4, which is the lease agreement with Georgian College Fire Station number 1. I'm employed on a full-time basis with Georgian College, so we'll be sitting out of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a mover and seconder to call the public meeting to order? Councillor Fisher, Councillor Garwood. That this public meeting of council held under section 34 of the Planning Act is as amended on official plan amendment application ZB 2023-006 by Rivera Long-Term Care Incorporated be called to order at 6:33 p.m. All those in favor? Thank you. Carried. Welcome to this public meeting of Springwater Township Council held in compliance with sections 34 of the Planning Act to give the public an opportunity to express their views in regard to the proposed amendment to the Township of Springwater zoning bylaw as amended. The first part of this meeting is to present the amendment. Following, the public will be given an opportunity to make an oral submission through the Zoom application or in person. Any person wishing to make an oral submission is to have notified the township prior to 8:30 a.m. this morning and have been added to the commenters list. If a person or public body who files an appeal of a decision of the Township of Springwater in respect of a zoning bylaw amendment does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to the Township of Springwater before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. All comments or questions should be addressed through the chair. Oral submissions will be included in this meeting's minutes and form part of the public record, including the name and address of the speaker as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The minutes of the meeting will be posted on the township's website. ZB 2023-006 by Rivera Long-Term Care for 27 Simcoe. I will now call upon the clerk to confirm notice of this meeting and the dates on which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 16th day of March, 2023 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 122 properties in the Township of Springwater within 120 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies at a location visible from Simcoe Street. Notice was also posted on the township website.
Has the planning department received any correspondence in response to the notice of public meeting?
Correspondence was received from resident Alex Shirley of Nash Avenue in an email dated March 16th, 2023, from the Ministry of Transportation in an email dated March 17th, 2023, from Enbridge in an email dated March 31st, 2023, and from Simcoe County District School Board in an email dated April 4th, 2023. The correspondence can be found attached to this evening's agenda.
Thank you. I now call upon Deborah Walker of MHBC to give a presentation outlining the purpose and effect of the proposal.
Hi, good evening, members of council. Thank you for the ability to speak tonight. I am Deborah Walker with MHBC Planning. We are the planning agent for Revera Inc., who are the owner of the subject lands. And just here tonight with me is Denise Galland. She is the project manager from Revera Inc. And Hugo Chan, who is the traffic engineer from IBI, who prepared the traffic impact study and the parking justification. I do have a presentation, so maybe I will just share my screen. Bear with me here. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Just a few comments. We have reviewed the staff report. We do agree with its recommendations. Members of council may recall, Denise and I were actually before council back just in January this year. And at that time, Denise had explained that the existing Sarah Vista home is about 40 years old, and under the rules set by the province, the existing long-term care home, as of June 2025, will no longer meet design and health criteria set by the province. So due to the age and the outdated configuration of the building, a renovation project would not be possible. So the home does need to be redeveloped to meet the new ministry's guidelines. And so thankfully, the province has awarded a 128-bed license for the new facility. Once it's constructed, the new facility is intended to accommodate the existing residents and provide access as well to care for new people to address the wait list that currently exists in the local community. So it will allow residents the opportunity to age in their community. At that time when we spoke, as council may be aware, if you recall, the project is under a very tight timeline in order to have approvals and construction in place before the license expires in the summer of 2025. So I know that Revera is very thankful to council for your support and staff who have done a really great job at keeping us on track with the compressed timeline, as you can see on the slide before you. So for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment before you this evening, there's really two aspects to it. One is to permit a parking ratio of 0.5 spaces per bed as the only variable. And then the second aspect is to establish a holding provision that will limit the future use of the existing long-term care building until such time that servicing capacity has been confirmed for any potential future use. So I will go back through those two components here a little bit more in detail. Before I do, I just want to note that the zoning bylaw amendment, there is no change that is being proposed to the use. So there is a site-specific zoning that only permits a nursing home use on the property. And any future use of the existing long-term care portion after the residents are transferred out of the existing building into the new facility, any future use will require zoning bylaw amendment. So there is no change as well to the minimum setbacks, to the maximum height, or to the maximum lot coverage. For the zoning schedule, you can see that it's into two sections, and it really reflects the severance that was recently approved by the Committee of Adjustment. So the southern portion is the lands to be severed, or has been approved to be severed, and that will accommodate the new long-term care home. to allow for its construction. And then the north portion will continue to accommodate the existing long-term care home until that transfer is able to take place. So the north portion is really where the holding provision will be subject to, and the south portion will be what the parking ratio will be subject to. So the parking ratio, whoops, there we go. The bylaw groups a number of uses together currently under your zoning bylaw. So it groups together nursing home, hospital, and home for the aged when applying the current parking ratio. So the current ratio has two variables and it applies the one which requires the most parking spaces. So it's 1 space per each 2 beds, or 0.5 spaces per bed, which is pretty typical for a nursing home. As well, it states 1 space per 40 square meters of gross floor area. And gross floor area is not typically applied to nursing homes in terms of parking space requirements, but it is often applied to hospitals. So in this case, when we have submitted site plans to the township for review, and the as shown on those site plans, the 0.5 spaces per bed will be met. So that one variable will be met, but it will not meet the parking requirement if the gross floor area variable is applied. So our IBI, as I mentioned, had completed the parking justification. And in summary of that detailed work, they strongly believe that the parking supply will meet the operational needs of the building, of the proposed building and the use. They say that on the basis that it exceeds what they call the ITE parking manual. So that's the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and it's an industry reference data manual. It also will exceed comparable long-term care sites as well that they have worked on. And it is similar to Revera's operational history with their other long-term care homes, including the one in Elmvale. So it does also, I think it's important to point out that that ratio also, when they looked at it, assumes 100% of staff will require parking, which is appropriate in Elmvale. So in other cases, they may actually require a lesser ratio where there's maybe more transit options and that kind of thing. But we've assumed no, that it's very limited in Elmvale, and therefore all staff will be driving to that facility. I think further, it is valuable and desirable to the community to provide an appropriate number of parking spaces, but is not necessarily valuable or desirable to provide an excess number of parking spaces that are not going to be used. So the second component is the holding provision. And so once residents have been transferred, the servicing capacity for the existing long-term care home will no longer be available for that northern portion of the site that I showed you earlier on the schedule. And so for that reason, and once it's severed, the holding provision will ensure that that northern portion, so any future use, does not occur until sewer capacity is confirmed. There is no confirmed plans for the future use of the existing long-term care building after residents are transferred to the new long-term care home and once the severance of the lands is finalized. Before I sign off, I just wanted to respond to a few comments that were submitted as part of the agenda package. And so the first one that I'd like to speak on is there were some comments submitted by one of the residents, Mr. Alex Shipley, on with his family live on Nash Avenue. And Mr. Shipley also spoke at the Committee of Adjustment, and there were the concerns in his comments relate to lighting. So dark sky and impact on adjacent residential uses, as well as height and as well as landscaping. So as we noted at committee, first of all, the maximum building height is actually, as of right, based on the current zoning bylaw, is 11 meters, or 2 stories is outright permitted. And the facility in this case is proposed to be 8.2 meters. So we're well below it. In terms of the lighting, as we explained at committee, those kinds of matters, lighting and trees and landscaping, that kind of thing is dealt through site plan approval. And as explained, detailed lighting plans have been submitted as part of the site plan approval application, and they are currently being peer reviewed by experts retained by the township. So the external lighting, and so there's external lighting required, of course, for the walkways and pathway or parking areas. We are working with the township to meet their requirements, so staff's requirements and the peer reviews requirements. And the thing is, in a community like this, lighting is really trying to find the right balance between safety and as well as dark sky and the potential impact on neighboring residents. So to mitigate this through the site plan approval, very detailed drawings are provided which dictate which light fixtures and light types are to be used and where they're to be located and how much light spillage there is and that kind of thing. So they do model it based on the information on the plans, and any excess of light is not to spill beyond the site into the sky. So, that they're working through those comments, and those are the kind of things that they do look at. In terms of interior lighting, the interior lights of the home, I understand from speaking with Ribera that they will cease and be dimmed during the night. There are some lit corridors, but they do not face out to the exterior of the home. And all of the windows, the home windows, will have blinds and curtains. In terms of the Simcoe County District School Board, so their comments assume the use is a residential subdivision, I think. So we're going to actually follow up. I think staff have already followed up with the board. As of course, this is not the case. There will not be students at this development. And so we'll try to get some more clarity that their comments don't apply in terms of student attendance. With that said, IBI was aware of the school 3:20 p.m. dismissal time before they set up the traffic survey. And the afternoon school times don't overlap with the typical 4 to 6 p.m. work-related rush hour. So as is typical, IBI reviewed the work-related afternoon peak hours activity in the analysis, which is more appropriate. And in terms of, there was some comments as well from the Ministry of Transportation and from Enbridge, but they have no concerns. So that was about the end of it. I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and hopefully that provides some additional clarity from Ribera's perspective. And we are certainly happy to answer any questions. And like I said, Denise and Hugo are here to help me with those. If council have any further questions about the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Appreciate the presentation. Are there any individuals who are present here tonight who would like to make an oral submission regarding this public meeting? Seeing none, I will turn to members of council if they have any questions or comments regarding this application. And it appears that there are none. I now call upon the moderator to provide the number of people who have registered to ask questions or make comments regarding this application.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. There are no members of the public who have registered to make an oral submission.
All right. Thank you. So that's it. May I have a mover and seconder to adjourn this public meeting? Councillor Moore, Councillor Alexander, that this public meeting of council held under Section 34 of the Planning Act for ZB 2023-006 Rivera Long-Term Care, Sarah Vista, does now adjourn at 6:50 p.m. And we'll continue on. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order? Oh, where am I at here? Yes, thank you. Thank you. May I have a mover and seconder to refer ZB 2023-006 back to staff? Councillor Fisher, Councillor Garwood, that council having held a public meeting in accordance with section 34 of the Planning Act as amended on zoning bylaw amendment application ZB 2023-006 by Rivera Long-Term Care, having noted correspondence and input received, direct that the application be referred back to staff. Are there any questions or discussions regarding this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. I will now call upon Chris Carrier to present the delegation regarding the fire department response cost recovery program for insured perils. I understand Mr. Carrier is here with us.
Good evening, council. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me congratulate all of you on your election to council. I had the privilege of serving the town of Collingwood from 1998 to 2010, both as a councillor and as mayor. And with the most recent term of council, Collingwood had somebody who decided to leave council in January 2022, and they asked me to serve 8 months of the remaining term, which I did, but I wasn't looking for a comeback tour, but I did enjoy the opportunity to be back. Next slide, please. Firemark began its operations in Ontario in 2011. We started with 0 clients, and we now have about a third of Ontario municipalities as clients. Our largest client is the city of Kitchener, about a 270,000 population. Our smallest client would be just under 500 people, and as mandated by the Municipal Act with a council of 5, 1% of their population are elected officials. So be careful what you say at a barbecue in the village of Newbury, Ontario. It doesn't matter to us if the fire service is a full-time composite department or a volunteer service, paid on duty firefighters. There's opportunities to recover expenses in response to an insured peril. Next slide, please. This has changed rather dramatically since 2011. There used to be 234 insurance companies operating coast to coast to coast. Now there's about 193. There's been some buyouts and amalgamations and changes in names. You'll see that the top 20 represent about 84% of the marketplace, but there's also a whole host of other market players, but they do represent a small share of the marketplace. Next slide, please. Almost all property insurance policies in Canada under the additional coverages section has something that says fire department service charges. You can check your own policies or your own business policies that you may have, and amounts that are covered will vary based upon the policy and the company that you're dealing with. This is an example of $25,000 in fire department service charges eligible to be recovered. Next slide, please. You'll also see a lot of policies that have $1,000. So it could be $1,000 coverage. It could be 3, 5, 10. It just depends on, once again, which insurance provider is providing you with your coverage and what type of policy that you have. Next slide, please. And once more. The legal definition of indemnification technology is something that we have included in our contracts with all of our municipal clients. We do maximize the billing opportunities on behalf of fire departments by invoicing insurance companies. So we are not sending an invoice to your constituent and saying, would you pay this, and then go running to your insurance company and hope to be reimbursed or expectation to be reimbursed. Our recovery team works for the most part with the insurance adjusters for the insurance company involved in the incident. Next slide, please. Next slide. Click it again. Thank you. What we're asking of your staff, and I have met with the fire chief to discuss our program. He's also been at a presentation with the Simcoe County Fire Chiefs Association as well when I've done a presentation. You need to amend either your existing consolidated fee bylaw or have a standalone cost recovery bylaw. Next slide. And the reason for that is that the insurance policy is a contract between the policyholder and the insurance company, and it is written in such a way that they will provide fire service expense coverage, but they will only pay if there's a requirement to pay. So as local government, you have the privilege to pass local legislation, of course, called bylaws. So once you pass a bylaw indicating that you wish to receive these funds, then from that day moving forward, you are eligible to receive those funds. It protects the insurance industry against going back retroactively to a large loss incident. That's why it's in the contract. You just touch the next button, please. And then the Insurance Bureau of Canada, who represents the insurance industry as their trade organization and the federal registered lobbyist. Of course, they have been on record as saying that these bylaws are both enforceable and legal. Next slide, please. I've detailed this with the fire chief and his team, but essentially what we would like is a copy of the standard incident report, some other information. We have a database of a number of policy wordings. As you could imagine, Firemark was started by a number of retired insurance adjusters. So we access that and then we reach out, let's say it's cooperators that we're dealing with in the incident. We know who the local adjuster is for cooperators in the area. We would reach out to them and ask about the incident, and we would piggyback on the claims process started by the policy holder. If the policyholder does not make a claim, then we close our file. The funds that are received, it takes about 14 weeks. The shortest recovery has been 8 days. The longest recovery has been just under 4 years. And that was an industrial fire. It had a maximum payout of several $1 million. So we had to wait until all of the other fees were paid out because it did have a maximum cap, but we were able to return $34,000 to the local fire department. Next slide, please. Funds recovered stay within the fire service budget. Next slide, please. Public education. Next slide, please. Personnel training and capital purchases. The insurance contract says fire department expenses. It does not say municipal general revenues. So it's in our contract that the monies that were recovered stay within the fire service budget. Next slide, please. You're all familiar with the Municipal Act. Next slide. One more, please. You have natural persons powers. Love it. When that changed, I had it. I was in office before it changed, and it was prescriptive. Thou shalt do this under the thumb of the province of Ontario. Nobody likes that. Natural persons powers. The test is reasonableness. Is it reasonable for a local municipality to enact legislation to unlock an insurance contract to which it's not a signatory to, but you are entitled to receive the fire department expenses? The policyholder is not entitled to receive those funds. Only the municipal fire department is. And if they don't get it, then the insurance company keeps it. It is most reasonable for you to take action to receive those funds. Next slide, please. Rates are not going to go up with this program. Touch the button, please. Once more. There we go. The Insurance Bureau of Canada, in their fact book that they put out every year, does talk about how premiums are calculated. So I'm with Aviva Insurance, my home. So I'm in the client portfolio pool of all the Aviva clients, and they measure risk. But along with covering claim costs, premiums are calculated to cover taxes, operating expenses, and expected profits. This has already been calculated into the budget that they should, into their premium that they should be paying out on fire department expenses. The fact that a lot of times they have not prior to 2010 just meant that it went into the profit pool of their equation. Next slide, please. Once more. And if anybody's feeling sorry for the insurance industry through COVID, please don't. This is a magazine from the Canadian Underwriter article. Only in 2003 and 2004 was there a higher return on equity by the insurance industry. I'm going to suggest to you that they're a very good organizations at making lots of money. Next slide, please. You will have your constituents ask you, of course, isn't that why I pay taxes to have a fire service? Yes, it is in part, but just as property owners have paid taxes, they've also paid for this in their insurance policy. And as I said earlier, all we're doing is asking the insurance company to honor the coverage for which they've charged your constituents and pay out to you through us to ensure that the fire department has an alternate revenue source for cost recovery. Next slide, please. I'm speaking fast because I know I have 10 minutes. And there are some of your fire chief's colleagues across the province and in the county of Simcoe. Just some of your neighbors are Collingwood, Wasaga Beach, Tiny Tay, Midland, Penetang, Agila, ESSA, and Clearview are all clients. So I know that Chief Kirk has spoken to a number of his colleagues about our program, and he can make a recommendation to you should you ask for one. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carrier. Appreciate that. Good presentation. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegation from Mr. Chris Carrier, Councillor Garwood, Councillor Fisher, that the delegation from Chris Carrier, National Accounts Manager, Fire Marquee, regarding the fire department response cost recovery program for insured perils be received. Are there any questions or discussions on this motion? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I wonder, could you please walk me through a scenario where we would use your service from start to finish? I'm a bit lost.
Sure. Through the chair to
Thank
the
you.
councillor. Let's say, unfortunately, you have a structure fire at your home. The fire service comes out, they put out the fire. And let's say you're insured with one of Canada's 193 insurers, cooperators, great company. And they pay you to rebuild your house, replace the contents, stay at a hotel. So you are entitled to those funds. The fire chief will then send to us a standard incident report. There are a number of expenses that the fire service incurs in response to that insured peril. Think of it like an operating inventory. They use up some types of things, foam, the cost of the trucks, the paid on duty firefighters. Those are costs incurred in response to that insured peril. So anything that's defined as a consumable is subject to recovery to the limits of the policy. With the cooperators policy, there's $5,000. So if the bill to put out the fire at your home is $10,000, we only recover $5,000. If it's $3,000, then we only recover $3,000. And so we're receiving those funds to offset the expenses of the fire service. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you. As always, I'll have some questions for you. I have to ask you, how is the personal information and data of the homeowners handled? And is there anything in place to safeguard that? And what authorizations do you folks get to have it?
So when we receive the standard incident report, it is a great question. We are in compliance with both provincial and federal legislation. When we receive that information, it's through your email, usually in a PDF format from the fire chief or the admin department in the fire chief service. So we get that information. We know where the fires occurred. Yes, we know who the insured is or who the constituent is. Our contact is with the insurance company. So we're looking at that information with them. And then when we're done with the file, everything is returned to you. We keep a copy of check from the insurance company, a copy of the invoice, and a copy, of course, of our check to you. So we actually purge our system of the information. We look at it like it's the Crisco oil solution. It all comes back except for 1 tablespoon.
Okay.
So that we're not retaining that. We do not want to have a record retention issue. All we're interested in is receiving the funds from the insurance company and then returning them to you. But yes,
Okay.
we do have access to that information. In consultation with the clerk or the Treasury Department, you can ask that in regulating a fee structure or cost recovery structure, you are accessing personal information about people. In our contract with you, we do have liability coverage, we do have cyber insurance coverage, and we are meeting thresholds of, let's say, City of Kitchener, population of 270,000. I mean, their legal team has gone through the coverages that they want to ensure that that information is protected. There's over 150 municipal clients whose information is protected, but they've all asked that question. It's a great question, to be sure.
Thank you. I guess my next question was partially answered based on Councillor Moore's with respect to the insurance coverage an individual might have, which leads me to my next question. Unfortunately, we're going to find out that there are folks out there who don't. They should, but for reasons unknown to us may not have coverage. How do we deal with those individuals?
We don't. We close the file.
close
So
the
it's
file.
only for people that have coverage. There is no deductible applied to this
Okay.
section, and we only recover to the limits of the policy. So the policyholder is not on hook for any money at all.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, I guess, and then I'll look to council, see if this may have piqued any more questions from them, is this is strictly for structure fires, or would it also apply to incidents where our service attends an accident scene, our service attends a medical emergency, that type of thing?
On the medical emergency, I wish, when you take a look at the arrangement that the province has with ambulatory care, I mean, they fund 50%. Well, they say they fund 50%. It's usually lagging. If you ever sit at the county, you'll find out it's usually lagging. The medical calls represent a large portion of the fire service calls, and I think the province of Ontario should be paying a percentage up to 50% of the cost of those calls. Ours are only for insured perils. So we have recovered on structure fires, a tornado, lightning strikes, explosion, boat fires, two or three small plane crashes, and one train derailment. So we will provide a list to the fire chief, what the insured perils to look for. If it's involving an incident that's involving a property and staff are unsure, they can send us the file. There's no cost for us to review the file and look at it and say, no, it's not recoverable, and to return it. There is no annual, there is no minimum. The only time we receive money is when you receive money.
Any further questions from council? Excuse me. Any questions, motion, no. All those in favor of receiving the delegation? Good, thank you very much.
Thank you. And may I leave just a
Carrier.
small package of information for you? It's what you would receive at OSIM or AMO or FCM. We'll be there, so please look for us. Thank you.
I'll now call upon Mr. John Weller to present the delegation regarding the Barrie North Winter Tennis Lease Extension. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegation from Mr. Weller? Councillor Garwood, Councillor Thompson. Go right ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of council. My name's John Weller. I'm the owner operator of Barrie North Winter Tennis. I'm here tonight to give you a sense of our history and shed some light on certain developments with our club over the years. It may be worth noting that I have supporting documentation for all components of this delegation as presented tonight. So many of these pieces are actually on file through the clerk's office in case anybody needs follow-up. Hang on, I'm just trying to get to the next page. Here we go. Next slide, please. Thank you. BNWT is a seasonal club operating each year from October to late April on township courts located at Doran Park in Midhurst. We are now part of an organization of 8 clubs that make up Tennis Clubs of Canada. Next slide. In 2003, my partner Terry Edwards and I purchased the existing business and the accompanying lease with the township from Air Athletics. They were a company based out of Oakville. Since 2003, it has remained a locally owned and operated family-run business. Next slide, please. In 2004, I sent a letter to the Township of Springwater through Ron Belcourt, then the Director of Recreation, Parks and Properties. With no contractual obligation to do so, we offered to share the cost of resurfacing the courts. In the end, Ron told me that he had the resurfacing passed in the township budget and that the township was going to look after payment of the resurfacing. That said, the parking lot was an issue outside the dome. It was very swampy in the spring with the thaw. It would freeze over. It was a safety concern. In lieu of contributing to the resurfacing of the courts, BNWT paid 60% of the cost of paving the lot. Again, we were not obligated to do so. We just felt as a good corporate citizen that we would take that on. In that same letter I wrote, we are considering further improvement projects which would be contingent on our securing an extension on our current relationship with the Township of Springwater. Next slide, please. On June 16, 2014, Springwater Council carried resolution C-171 stating that staff commenced negotiations with Barrie North Winter Tennis for an extension of an agreement for the provision of winter tennis at Doran Park. After continued discussion over the next few years, in August 2017, BNWT received an email from Mr. Belcourt confirming that an extension of our original lease had been granted to 2028. Next slide. This is a copy of that email, that actual email. It states the following is a confirmation of the current lease for the Doran Park Tennis with Barrie North Winter Tennis. Term of lease 1998 to 2018. Term extension 10 years extension was granted in 2014 until 2028. Annual fee $0, no fee. The email also stated that Ron was currently working on another extension of the lease agreement to 2033 or 2038. With such an extension believed to be in place on our part, and although the current dome still had many years of usable life left in it, BNWT decided to purchase a new dome that fall, complete with insulation and hanging LED lighting at a cost in excess of $400,000. Next slide, please. Discussion of a new lease agreement with Mr. Belcourt continued in 2018 with page 1 of a 7-page draft shown here. As was the case with the original lease, the clause under ownership of the dome and clubhouse stated that at the termination date, the clubhouse shall be transferred to the township for the sum of $1. It was at that same time that we were exploring the option of perhaps purchasing a new clubhouse at significant expense, and we didn't want to give up a clubhouse of that expense for $1. The clubhouse, next slide, sorry. The clubhouse we were looking at would have been close to $500,000, and we didn't want to simply transfer ownership to the township for $1 at the end of the lease. Instead, Ron and I discussed some version of fair market value. Although he changed the wording in the 2019 draft to read at the termination date that the clubhouse shall be transferred to the township for a mutually agreed sum of money, unfortunately, Mr. Belcourt retired before a new agreement was consummated. In hindsight, I wish that I was more proactive in pursuing the finalization of this agreement. Next slide. On page 2 of the agreement draft pertaining to the term and termination date, item 1 reads, the term of this agreement is September 1st, 2019 until April 30th, 2039. Next slide. In the meantime, BNWT continues to maintain a good tenant relationship with Springwater, paying all hydro bills incurred during our 7 months of operation on time, as we always have, and water bills we actually pay all 12 months of the year. During the period of COVID-19, it's my belief that policies and operating procedures that we put forth made us the safest indoor tennis facility in the province. And I feel I had, constant contact with Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. I feel that they would agree that was the case. Business was slow to mediocre for our first dozen years, but since COVID, the increased demand for winter tennis has led to our creation of a waiting list for membership. Next slide. Our partnership with Springwater has benefits for the township as well, in that the courts covered in the winter reduce the need for costly resurfacing, as the courts are not exposed to the elements, don't experience heaving, cracking, and paint loss, that type of thing. Springwater residents have the opportunity as well for additional physical activities during these winter months, and the club also offers local employment opportunities. Next slide, please. While BNWT has been open to discussing a new lease, no long-term replacement had been found for Ron Belcourt since his retirement as director. Last year, we resumed talks with Township on a new lease and agreed to a number of concessions not found in the original lease, nor the drafts from 2018 or 2019, including the payment of a monthly rent, the prioritization of Springwater residents from our waiting list, and the offering of a membership discount for Springwater residents, which we actually implemented this past year in good faith. Next slide. And again, we're okay with all of those items. We're in agreement with those. The largest outstanding item, however, on the new lease would be the term, with township staff pushing for a 5-year term while BNWT is requesting 20 years. Next slide. Reasons in favor of a 20-year lease include giving us time to recoup our investment of that newly purchased dome, security for our staff. Should we need to apply for funding, it would show stability with any potential lender. 20-year term would be consistent with all of our other Tennis Clubs of Canada agreements with their respective municipalities, and allows us to provide affordable and quality indoor tennis for Springwater and area residents for years to come. Next slide. Although at one point we were looking at a much more significant investment in new clubhouse, as previously mentioned, post-COVID costs have skyrocketed. BNWT chose instead to have some interior renovations done to the clubhouse last summer, including new reception desk, new flooring, and a new washroom, vanities, and faucets. While we don't dispute the clause in the original lease, which stated that the township shall purchase the clubhouse for $1, and we acknowledge that council has instructed staff to do that, we question the rationale for doing so. As part of our new lease agreement, we have been requested to have all contents removed from the clubhouse by May 14th each year, which we're puzzled by. Next slide. Regarding summer usage of the clubhouse, there are factors to be considered. In talks with the summer club, they have no desire to use the clubhouse, and they don't want to assume the responsibility of keys and security. There's no air conditioning in there. It's baseboard heating with the windows. It routinely soars to 32 degrees Celsius or more. We have bell security system in place, but break-ins have occurred in the past. Typically in the past, we've used the clubhouse for storage of items like tennis nets, court divider nets, on-court benches, that type of thing. We also have furniture and built-in refrigerators that would need to be removed each year. We also have new booking software anticipated for the fall, and we typically would like to do staff training, that sort of thing. Yes, we can put these things in storage, but again, this is an increased cost and requires more time and effort. And we only ask, why can't we share the space? And finally, the last slide. I want to thank you very much for listening to our presentation. I'm happy to entertain any questions that anybody might have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Weller. Appreciate that. Okay, open it to discussion. Any questions or discussion on Mr. Weller's presentation? Councillor Fisher?
Mr. Weller, you brought up storage over the course of the summer. What would be I guess the size of the contents? I've been in your clubhouse. It's fairly large. How much space would the contents take up in the course of the summer?
We have on court, we actually have 8 white benches. They seat, they could seat probably 3 people at a time. Typically, those are stored inside the, inside the clubhouse. They would be right in the main room for the most part, against the wall. Still leaves space, but it takes up some room. Again, typically, the divider nets and that sort of deal go into the change rooms. They often get, put right into the showers. We have 2 showers in each. But it's still a usable space, but that's where we would keep things.
So in your eyes, then it doesn't take up a lot of room to leave it there throughout the summer?
No, like I say, the space is still usable, however, it would be difficult to, to move off property and back again.
Understood.
Other members of council? Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I just have a comment. I wanted to thank you for coming to do the delegation. Mr. Weller, I did have the opportunity to meet with yourself and your son and do a tour of the facility this week. I think the family clearly shows a passion, not only for the sport, but also providing the service to this community. And I think we're very lucky to have a business like this in Springwater.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments from myself, I guess. I think the stickler here is, as you say, the lease period. I know from my standpoint with what's going on down in the south end of Springwater Township with the number of residents that are moving in, that I personally think that there are going to be some changes that will be instrumental in what our recreational capabilities and recreational facilities are going to be coming down the road because of that. It's not going to remain stationary. When it comes to the clubhouse itself, I recall being at that meeting when there was discussion about the $1. And I guess from my standpoint, when I'm listening to you, Mr. Weller, it was a good presentation. When we talk about the parking lot and the dome and a lot of these other items, these are all items that would serve your purpose as a businessman as well, not necessarily just Springwater Townships. So it has been a bit of a symbiotic relationship. But I think for myself, when it comes to the clubhouses, it's something that township obviously could utilize over the course of the summertime. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to imagine township actually installing air conditioning in the clubhouse to make it utilized better in the summertime for the other folks that are using the pavilions and whatnot there. So those would be my comments. And I'm just wondering, is it possible to reach out to General Manager Ramdale, if he's handy? I just wanted to ask Mr. General Manager Ramdale, with respect to the clubhouse, what purpose or what staff might envision the utilization of that clubhouse to be over the course of the off tennis period.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral, through you to all of council as well. And if I do miss anything, Manager Dean is on the call and she can support. Staff's view of the clubhouse is that it does provide opportunity for others, not only the Midhurst Tennis Club, but others who might come in the future. We don't know them as yet. The Barrie North Winter Tennis is asking for 20 years. I can't foresee out to 20 years. So in this case, it would be opportunities for ourselves as a township to utilize the courts and the facilities over the summer, and others as well. And that's the benefit we see to it. That's number one. And the second part as well for the clubhouse, it was in a township, a council direction back in 2019 that we seek this. So we're following through on that as well.
Thank you, Manager Ramdale. Any other comments? Councillor Thompson.
Through the chair, Mr. Wellers, or actually through to staff. So is there, I'm confused. Is there a specific use that we're looking for the clubhouse, or is this, we just want to leave it open in case we do find a use for it in the future?
I'll go to General Manager Ramdale then. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. Through you to Councillor Thompson. It is really two aspects. One is there is the existing council direction from 2019. But in the case of the township, there are other organizations and bodies that use that court, that if it is, we believe that if the clubhouse is available to them through the township, they likely will use it. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect is we are going through our own recreation master plan update. And that in itself may recommend other aspects for this clubhouse. At this stage, staff, myself, and Manager Dean do not wish to tie the township as to our potential for later. The acquisition of this clubhouse was part of the last agreement, and that's what we're proceeding upon as well, so to give us the options.
Thank you, Manager Ramdale. I'm going to ask for council's indulgence. I think this is coming up again in a minute, perspective of the lease period. I'm wondering if we might accept the delegation, if that's agreeable to council, and then wait until this item comes up again later in the agenda. So if there's no objection to that, I'd prefer to do that. Would that be okay? All those in favor of receiving Mr. Weller's delegation? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Weller. I do appreciate your time, sir. We're going to enter into question period. Members of the public are invited to ask questions of council or make comments regarding an item on the agenda. Questions not on the agenda will be at the discretion of the chair. In order to accommodate the registration process for oral presentations, submissions will be accepted until 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting. In accordance with the procedural bylaw, the first 5 submissions will be accepted in the order they are received on a first come, first served basis, with a total of 10 minutes to be dedicated to question period. Clerk Ainsworth, have any submissions been received?
Thank you. There have been no submissions received for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. All right, I think it might be reasonable to pull that particular item forward with respect to the tennis courts, and that would be item 10.1. We might be able to bring that forward and we'll have discussion on it now, if that's okay. May I have a mover and seconder for the deferred options report regarding the Barrie North Winter Tennis lease extension and purchase of clubhouse? Councillor Garwood, Councillor Alexander. That the report from the manager, Recreation, Parks and Facilities regarding the Barrie North Winter Tennis lease extension and purchase of clubhouse options dated April the 5th, 2023 be received, and option 1, that staff be authorized to finalize negotiations to include a 5-year lease term and renewal provisions, or option 2, that staff be authorized to finalize negotiations to include a 20-year lease term, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the clubhouse purchase agreement, lease agreement, and any other resulting documents between the township of Springwater and the Barrie North Winter Tennis. Are there any questions or discussions on this motion? Councillor Fisher.
As Ward 5 councillor where this business resides, I do advocate for a 20-year lease extension. The business is part of the fabric of not only Springwater, but Ward 5. As we heard, after 12 years, the business started to hit its stride, and I would hate to handicap it by only limiting it to a 5-year lease. And therefore, I do advocate for a 20-year lease. That being said, I think we should take a look at storage in the facility during the summer. To Mr. Rondeau's point, we can't predict the future. And I think we may not want to handcuff ourselves by using it as storage. It may work out in the short term, but not in the long term. So I do advocate for the 20-year option. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on council like to speak to this matter? Councillor Thompson.
From the presentation, I can see that Barrie North Winter Tennis seems to have made a significant investment, both financially and socially in our community. And I think it would be wise for us to make a significant investment in them. And I would definitely be in favor in at least a 20-year lease extension to this business.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I completely agree with Councillor Fisher and Councillor Thompson. I think we can sit here and talk about what we could use that space for in the summer months, but we have an excellent partner sitting right here that I believe that we need to continue with. I know recreation has also been a topic that this council has been discussing a lot lately. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to let residents know that Springwater is supportive of our recreational facilities and absolutely support the 20-year option.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I'm wondering, I'm certainly supportive of the 20-year lease, so I'll say that first. Is there an opportunity, or how do you feel, Mr. Weller, about township, say they did want to run a summer program or something of that nature in your facility? Are you open in the future to exploring, those kinds of programs?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great.
If it pertains to storage, as they say, certain items in there can be, easily removed from the building for a short period of time, as opposed to taking them elsewhere and putting them in storage somewhere. As I mentioned, we have 2 refrigerators, heater, and water, and all that kind of thing. they're installed underneath the counter and whatnot. I mean, it would be, I think, difficult for us to move those each and every spring. If it's for a short-term thing, absolutely.
Thank you. And I'm thinking of, just day camps or, those short summer programs.
If I could interrupt for just a second, Mr. Weller, if you'd be so kind to come back up here so that the folks that are watching remotely would be able to hear your responses.
Sure.
Sorry about that,
No,
Councillor.
that's quite
Moore.
all right. That's quite all right. I should mention that my head coach, who's been with me as head coach for 15, 16, 17 years, Johnny Glanville, he runs programming of his own. So we have no affiliation with the summer club, right? We love the people, right? We have a good relationship, but we have no, direct affiliation with them. Johnny has been our coach, and in the summertime, he runs his own business called Simcoe Tennis. He runs day camps. He's got Spark camps, all that kind of stuff. He does that just outside the courts and makes use of the courts. And certainly over the years, he has used our clubhouse. We've had no issues with that. I've never charged Johnny rent for doing so. It's just something that, we've always done. And if he or a like camp wants to do the same, we would have no issue.
Sorry, follow on.
Councillor Thompson.
So through the chair to Mr. Weller, the clubhouse in the summertime, really the only benefit I could see would be offering washroom facilities, which are provided only meters away to the public in the park. So I'm not sure of what benefit it would be to any of our rec programs to have access to the clubhouse in the summertime. It's really in the wintertime, all it really provides from my perspective is an out of the cold facility. And I'm not sure what use we would have for the clubhouse for a summer camp.
I'm sorry, I believe Councillor Moore had a follow on and I cut her off short.
Thank you. I wasn't aware of that. So thank you for saying that too, Councillor Thompson. But I also wanted to say that I think that we should really support you and your club in that you are a model community partner. And I really want to promote that and promote others to look at what you've done and how successful you've been. So whatever I can do to support you, I certainly will.
Thank you. I'm just going to interject here a couple of comments of my own real quick. Number one, and I do have a question for Manager Dean coming up, but I don't see and I'm going to be honest, I don't see the need necessarily how 5-year lease with an option to renew, until the need arises when the township does want to utilize those facilities for whatever purpose township might want. A township should be the master of its own destiny. Just in the same way that you would like to have a 20-year lease, I certainly understand that. I can also understand from township's perspective and staff's perspective that a 5-year lease would be more beneficial because we've got the Hasty Track coming on. We've got a lot of growth in the south end that might change the aspect. So it's not to prevent you from continuing it on. It's just to provide an option to township 10 years down the road. Maybe we would like to utilize that property for another purpose, or we would like to do something else at that point in time. So my perspective is we went from 20 years to 10 years. I'm wondering if maybe a 10-year lease might be more appropriate, but unfortunately, I don't think I would be able to support a 20-year lease. I'd also like to call upon Manager Dean, because one aspect I'm not sure of is whether or not there's any financial gain for the township with respect to the Midhurst Tennis Club utilizing the facilities.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through yourself and to the rest of council. So currently, we have not been requested by the Midhurst Tennis Club to use the clubhouse. And as Mr. Weller stated, I don't believe they've had a similar request. Could there be financial gains in the future? Potentially, but I couldn't state that for certain.
Thank you, Manager Dean. I guess my question is township receiving any financial support for the utilization of the tennis courts right now or for the course of the last 10 years? Has there been any cost recovery for the utilizing the tennis court facilities?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, so the Midhurst Tennis Club does have a use agreement with the township. So there is a financial contribution from the summer months from the Midhurst Tennis Club for the court specifically. They also did do a donation. I don't have that exact amount, but they did do a donation or a partnership with the township on the upgrades to the Lucy Cook Pavilion. So that's the pavilion that is by the playground that does have the washrooms in it.
Thank you. And I believe Councillor Alexander would like to say something, and then I'll go to Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. Well, I certainly understand your perspective in that from the township's perspective, potentially a 5-year lease would be better. I do feel a 5-year lease is not a viable business option for Mr. Weller, and I think we risk losing him because if I was in that position, I would be looking elsewhere for my business rather than waiting every couple of years to see if the township was willing to renew my lease, which is why I certainly do support a 20-year lease. I do have a question either for Manager Dean or GM Ramdale with respect to the clubhouse. If we were to take it over during the summer months, I'm assuming that we would be liable for any damages that happened to that building. And if we've put into any thought of what the cost would be to us on that, just to make sure it offsets our need for it.
Manager Dean.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through yourself to Councillor Alexander. So in terms of insurance costs, I don't know if that's fully the cost you're looking at, but in terms of insurance costs, it would have to be put under our township insurance policy for facility costs. And in terms of general, I guess for lack of better terms, general vandalism or damage to the building in the summer, that would be a cost that the township would have to repair to the building. So depending on the extent of that damage, whether it was something that would go through insurance or whether it was something that would become more operational, that would be an expense the township would have to incur. I don't unfortunately have any past history on if there has been significant costs in the summer in terms of damage to that facility.
Follow on.
I just should do a quick follow on. I don't even know if this is such a question versus just a comment. I would comment that I think we have seen not significant, but yearly damage to our parks and recs buildings from whether it is youth or a little older, just maybe potentially like, doing it on purpose or just happens. So I do think we need to be very aware that that is a very real problem that may happen. And we are now on the hook for it when I'm not sure the exact need for the building.
Councillor Fisher.
2 points. I am in agreement. 5 years, a 5-year lease for a business handcuffs that business. Again, that's why I advocate for the 20-year. I couldn't expect a business to feel like they're on solid footing in Springwater with a 5-year option. Point one. Another matter. I actually spoke earlier today with the Midhurst Tennis Club, and they're seeing a lot of usage during the summer, so much so that they need more facilities, and maybe that's an option where we do use it during the summer and we don't need to look into in the next 4 or 5 years building more courts outside. So if we could utilize that, and that could be a possibility, that would be a real bonus for them as well as Springwater residents and your club as well.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Just on that, I think the whole idea of having the tennis courts available in the summertime is so that every resident can just go there and simply use them. So I don't know if tying it up with an organized tennis club per se over the summer months would actually serve the purpose. I mean, obviously they want to play indoors, but I do have one question for CAO Schmidt with respect to the tennis court building. If I'm not mistaken, council direction in the past was to exercise their option for $1.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's my understanding as well.
Just for clarification, Councillor Fisher, you had something else to add to that?
No, just to your point, actually, the Midhurst Tennis Club is presently using it during the summer. And actually many residents can't use it because they're sharing it with them. So with the addition of the courts, frankly, we'd have more usage for both that club and residents. And so be more courts available to more people, both residents and organizations.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Alexander, do you have your hand up again? All right, then I guess as someone putting a motion on the floor, I think Councillor Fisher mentioned something, but I didn't hear him actually propose.
Yeah. I propose option 2.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Moore? So Councillor Fisher's amendment is to go with option number 2. Is there any discussion on that? Or are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Carried. And now the main motion is amended. That the report from the manager, Recreation, Parks and Facilities regarding Barrie North Winter Tennis lease extension and purchase of clubhouse options dated April 5th, 2023 be received, and that staff be authorized to finalize negotiations to include a 20-year lease term, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any clubhouse purchase agreement, lease agreement, and any other resulting documents between the Township of Springwater and the Barrie North Winter Tennis. All those in favor? Carried.
Thank you all.
May I have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes of council? Councillor Fisher, Councillor Garwood. Motion that the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. Minutes of the special meeting of council dated March 8th, 2023. Minutes of the special meeting of council of March 15th, 2023. Minutes of the special meeting of council closed session of March 15th, 2023. And the minutes of the regular meeting of council of March the 15th, 2023. Are there any questions on these minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the minutes of boards and committees and organizations? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Moore. That the minutes of the boards, committees, and other organizations listed herein be received as information. Minutes of the Elmville BIA meeting of February the 16th, 2023. Draft minutes of the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority Board meeting of March the 24th, 2023. Are there any questions on these minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Correspondence and information. Support resolutions regarding the Ontario School Board's election, Township of East Garifraxa and Town of Lincoln. Councillor Moore moves this motion. May I have a seconder to get it on the floor? Councillor Alexander. The motion is that correspondence items 1.5 and 1.6 of the March 10th, 2023 council information package be received, and that council of the Township of Springwater hereby supports the resolution passed by the council of the town of Petrolia regarding the school board trustee elections, and that staff be directed to draft a letter urging the provincial government to review how school board trustee elections are conducted in the province of Ontario, recommending that school boards be made responsible for conducting the trustee elections, or alternatively that municipalities be compensated appropriately for its management and conduct of school board trustee elections. And further, that this resolution and the reference letter be circulated to Simcoe County municipalities, the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honorable Stephen Lecce, Minister of Education, and the Honorable Doug Downey, MPP, Barrie Springwater, Oro Medonte. Are there any questions or discussions on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, action reports, and I think in this particular case, I'm going to pull 11.4 due to the declaration. However, I'll read through them, and if you want any of them pulled, please let me know. Others. Mover and seconder to approve the action reports. Councillor Thompson and Councillor Moore. Does council want to pull any of the items for separate consideration outside of 11.4? No. That action reports 11.2 through 11.3 be received and that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. 11.2, creation of a parkette at 732 County Road 90 and the acquisition of a T-33 aircraft. 11.3, environmental assessment modernization update. Are there any questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. We'll step back to 11.4. The lease agreement with Georgian College Fire Station. I understand there's a declaration of pecuniary interest. So the rest of us will be voting on it. All those in favor? Oh, I need a seconder for that one. Councillor Moore, I'll get an extra person just in case. Councillor Fisher. Any comments or concerns about that particular item? Okay, that's the lease agreement with Georgian College Fire Station number 1. All those in favor? Carried. Did you have a question, Councillor Fisher? Okay, thank you. Okay, so they're all done then. Okay. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the information reports? Councillor Fisher. Councillor Thompson. That the report items listed herein be received as information. Number 1, Bylaw Services Monthly Activity Report, January 2023. Number 2, Bylaw Services Monthly Activity Report, February 2023. Number 3, Backyard Project and Information Day. Are there any questions or comments on these? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, verbal reports, development updates. I guess we're going to General Manager Ramdale.
Good evening again. Hi. Today I wish to just provide an update on one item which is related to the mixed subdivision. And this is really the Carson Road between Ann and Wilson Street. There's been a lot of construction traffic over this section of roadway, and it really shows with a lot of our crews are out there several times each week patching potholes, and this will continue until a more robust resurfacing of that road. That road is a priority for staff, and earlier today we confirmed a plan with the developer to resurface Carson Road around June of this year. The work section will be from Ann Street going west over to the county's roundabout construction limits. So this should resolve the condition issues between that in that stretch of roadway. In the future, and we're still in discussion with the developer around the exact timing of this, but in the future, the developer will reconstruct all of Carson Road from Highway 26 over to Wilson Street. And that brings me to the end of this evening's update.
Thank you, Manager Ramdale. Questions, Councillor Fisher?
General Manager Ramdale, when do you think this resurfacing from Highway 26 over will happen for Carson Road? Because, quite a few people on that road do complain.
Manager Amdale.
Through your Deputy Mayor Cabral to Councillor Fisher. The problem section on Carson Road is between Ann Street over to Wilson Street. The quality of the surface is different than from Ann Street over to Highway 26. The resurfacing in June will be for that problem area. That's what we are addressing right now. In the future, and as part of the development plan for the area, it is to reconstruct the entire area, likely after most of the construction is finished, most of the home construction is finished, likely to reconstruct that entire roadway to a very robust state. Our plan right now is to resurface the bad areas and bring it up to an acceptable condition, recognizing that the construction traffic will cause more damage as we go forward.
Follow on.
Again, do you have a timeline for it? Because I think if we're looking at 4 years in the future, the road will look like Swiss cheese in that amount of time, right? So are you looking to do it within a 2-year period, or what would be your estimated time for when that would be reconstructed?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Cabral, over to Councillor Fisher. I don't have an exact time. If I were projecting out, 2 years may seem reasonable. It is subject to conversations with the developer, and also subject to how fast they're able to develop the areas, the lands, which, and again, is subject to market conditions and all the other aspects. So there are a lot of variables out there. Our intention and our conversations with the developer is to ensure that we don't have that Swiss cheese, as you describe it, condition after June. And that is what we are looking to address.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. Could we please ask, or I'll ask CAO Schmidt, that we put out some communication about that, please? Some formal communication, both projects. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. Municipal county updates don't have one. They didn't have a meeting since the last time we met, so there's no county update. Municipal updates. Does anybody have any municipal updates they'd like to share? Councillor Thompson.
Would like to make everybody aware and invite them to Anton Mills this Saturday to enjoy the Rabbit Run, which you need to register for at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then the Easter extravaganza starting at 11 o'clock to help us to celebrate Easter and in support of the Elmville Food Bank. So please come and enjoy yourselves, and we're going to do a weather guarantee for you.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander.
Thank you. I just wanted to say myself and Deputy Mayor Cabral had the opportunity to attend the SSEA Environmental Champion Awards on Friday, March 24th. The SSEA honored a number of local environmental volunteers, ranging from students to a legacy award for lifelong commitments. I wanted to do a special call out to Springwater's own Katie Harries, who received the Sustainability and Stewardship Champion Award for championing and leading the never-ending battle to control invasive species within the Severn Sound watershed. It was a great event, and I would like to say that I am just continuously impressed with the dedication and passion of not only the staff at the SSEA, but also the amazing group of volunteers they have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. Just a couple items I wanted to mention. On March the 21st, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Alexander, and I attended the unveiling of the Welcome to Elmville sign with the Elmville Lions Club and members of staff. So again, I wanted to thank that group, and I know a lot of residents are quite excited about that sign. The second item I wanted to mention, on March the 23rd, we had our second Elmville CRA meeting, and we had over 25 people attend, which was really amazing. So many people were adding a microphone to the next meeting because and more tables, because again, we're growing like crazy. We've identified various committees and have a great plan moving forward. So we're quite excited about that. On this past Saturday, April the 1st, the Elmville Cooperative Nursery School hosted a Easter egg hunt in Elmville, which was really fun. My wife and I took the kids, and it was a great fundraiser for the local nursery school. So thank you to everyone that came out and supported that. On April the 8th, the blood drive clinic will be happening at the community hall from 9:30 to 2:30. So again, if you can sign up for that, that'd be wonderful. And my last item, I promise, is on April the 11th, our next BIA meeting is occurring, but it's going to be in person, which is a change after the last few years. The deputy mayor knows when he sat on the BIA, it's been virtual for some time. So we're excited to welcome folks back in person at 6 p.m. at the library on April the 20th. So thanks again.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I guess we'll move on. Oh, sorry. And did you have your hand up there, Councillor Fisher? Because if you do, I didn't see it, okay? The opportunity has presented itself.
I would actually like to propose a reconsideration of the library van at this time. And Renee, go ahead and read it.
Okay.
All right, excellent. Just read it.
You need a seconder, Councillor Moore, and since it's a reconsideration, I might ask Clerk Ainsworth for the benefit of everyone on council how reconsideration takes place.
Thank you. So for a reconsideration, the motion to reconsider would be put on the table just as it was, moved and seconded. The reconsideration itself is without debate or discussion. So at this point, once I'm done explaining, the deputy mayor will call the vote. What will happen is if council would like to reconsider the courier van for the library, they would vote in favor of the motion to reconsider. If council does not want to see that motion from the March 15th meeting reconsidered, they would vote against the motion. So if the reconsideration is supported and council would like to see it back on the table, then the original motion from March 15th would be placed back on the table and debate would be opened. The motion could be amended and whatnot, and then reconsidered at the end of that discussion.
No. On the process you can, but not about the actual reconsideration.
Why, we're just reconsidering the purchase or the lease? Because that was March 15th.
Yes, we're going back in time to open it up again and have dialogue on it. So I will call for the vote. All those in favor of reconsideration? Carried. I'm going to ask Clerk Ainsworth to bring us up to speed on the actual motion that we dealt with before. During that period of time, is it appropriate to let Councillor Fisher speak? Go ahead, Councillor Fisher.
I'll read the motion, that the motion now before council be amended as follows, that the second paragraph be removed and replaced with the following, that 3,000 be allocated to the library for the rental of a vehicle for special events in 2023. And further, that the library document the rentals needed for 2023, including cost, the event type, for consideration of rental costs for 2024.
Clerk Ainsworth, if you'd read the main motion, please.
Thank you. So the main motion that would be on the table from the March 15th meeting would be that the report from the CEO of the Springwater Township Public Library regarding the library courier / outreach van purchase dated March 15th, 23 be received, and that the library purchase a courier van in the amount of $50,000 with the funds to be drawn from the library discretionary capital reserve fund. So that is the motion that would be on the table. That is being reconsidered, and what Councillor Fisher would be doing would be requesting an amendment to that motion. And we would need a mover and seconder actually to get the main motion on the table.
I have a mover to get the main motion on the table. Councillor Alexander, Councillor Fisher. And now we can hear Councillor Fisher.
So in my opinion, $50,000 for a van, whether it's lease or purchase, is very excessive. We're putting that on the backs of the taxpayer. And I don't believe that a valid case was brought forward before or even in the March meeting. What I've done is I've researched what rentals would cost. Frankly, you know, if they were to do somewhere between 10 and 15 events, justifiable events a year. I've spoken with Avis and Budget Rent-A-Car, and I've found that frankly, within $200, you can rent a van. You don't incur any depreciation, no maintenance costs on the van whatsoever. You use it and you send it back. So $3,000 in the course of a year should be more than enough to rent the van, pay for any additional insurances that you may want on it, and gas it up and send it back. This is much more affordable for the taxpayer, and it also allows council to sit back and gauge whether this is what we should be doing before we commit ourselves to a costly purchase that frankly in this marketplace would be probably well in excess of $50,000. Thank you.
Can we have a seconder for Councillor Fisher's amendment? Councillor Moore. Any further discussion? Councillor Moore, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I see that the library CEO is online. Could I just have her answer, please, on average? CEO Delgado, what do you think the van would be in use? Would it be more than once a month? Because it has been about a year and a half or so since this $50,000 was approved. So maybe you could explain to them how you've managed over the last year and a half.
CEO Delgado.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral, and through you to Councillor Moore and all of council. We have been using personal vehicles for the last year and a half, and this has been both for our courier, that is twice a week, plus for our special events and our outreach events. So it wouldn't just, we're not using this van or wouldn't be using this van just for special events, as was mentioned. It would be used twice a week at the very least for all of our courier. And I hear the point that prices have gone up, it is expensive, but we are hoping to get a good deal. It will be put out with other township vehicles for the procurement, which will hopefully bring it down because they'll be bidding on multiple vehicles, not just one. So over the past year, there's been wear and tear on our staff's cars. We actually had our courier, their car broke down in the parking lot of the township center one day. We had to go transfer all the bins to another car. And it's also a liability in my mind because they have to prove that they have insurance as well if anything happens too. So this van would already be under township insurance policies. It is coming out of our reserves. So the money has already been there. It is not an additional cost to the taxpayer for the purchase of this van.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, follow on.
So CEO Delgado, if there was a sense of urgency, I feel like this should have been addressed then in the last year and a half. So I am tempted at this point to look at this experiment and see if we can save $47,000 now and potentially in the future by looking at a rental option.
Councillor Fisher.
CEO Delgado, you mentioned you're looking for a good deal. Anyone shopping for a vehicle is looking for a good deal. And I think in this marketplace, nobody is getting one. If you look at the cost of ownership of a vehicle, one hidden cost is depreciation. Another one is ongoing maintenance. I think that we're incurring a lot of cost to really move books around and to go to these outreach programs. I think if we were to look at 15 programs a year, you'd be well within the $3,000 allotted. It would also give council some real perspective on actual usage where we'd be able to document exactly what we were using the van for. As for couriering back and forth between the two branches, I think that frankly, there are staff moving in between and we can utilize their vehicles. But we really can't afford a $50,000 expenditure for that type of thing.
Councillor Thompson.
Through the chair to CEO Delgado, what are we spending now? Because we are paying mileage to staff members, correct, for using their vehicles? On an annual basis, what would you estimate that we're spending?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Thompson. I will have to look up those numbers. This is a bit of a surprise tonight. I believe it was around 3,500, and I can look up the exact numbers. Everything was in our report from March 15th. I would also like to address the fact that there was no urgency. We did try putting it forward in the spring, and then I became ill. So then I was actually off on leave for full-time for over 5 weeks, and then I was off part-time for 7 weeks. So that is one of the reasons why it did not come forward last year, because I was not in the office to put it forward.
Councillor Fisher.
You mentioned mileage, I think we should also see if these are justifiable trips in order to be paying this mileage out. What I propose is that we use rentals to cover the outreach programs for you, which I believe would be the bulk of the mileage you're putting on. And again, I think that would allow us to assess whether this is an actual needed purchase or not. Because in reality, the last report I saw, I can't justify voting on that because I didn't have proper information.
I'm going to go to Councillor Garwood.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Cabral, to Clerk Ainsworth. Clerk Ainsworth, can you please remind myself how council voted on that March 15th date? Was it unanimous?
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. I would have to look back. I do not believe there was a recorded vote requested. If there was no recorded vote requested, then I wouldn't be able to provide the breakdown.
Thank you, Councillor Garwood. Councillor Thompson.
Through the chair to CEO Schmidt, just a question. Can you refresh me and help me understand what are the boundaries for council to get involved in the operation of the library?
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson, it's my understanding that the library does act as a kind of a third party extension to the township, or a separate entity to the township. From an operations standpoint, the township or council has limited control over the operations. That being said, with respect to this particular item, because it's actually being funded or proposed to be funded out of a reserve fund, that's where a council authority comes into play.
I'm just going to go ahead of you for 1 second here. I'm just curious to know, and I'm going to ask CEO Schmidt. I know that I can tell you right now in Elmville, there's DoorDash and a few others that are couriering food. I was wondering whether or not the transportation of books might be something that could be accomplished by a courier service as opposed to employees utilizing their own vehicles, quite possibly at even lesser cost. I'm just curious if you're aware of any courier services in the area. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to you. I am not aware of any courier services locally. That said, it's something that staff could definitely take a look into. And I think further, it is a potential option that could be explored here. So I'll leave it at that. Actually, one further comment I guess I will make is looking at the report from March 15th, just to confirm on the mileage that was stated in the report, it was just under $3,500 for 2022.
Thank you, CEO Schmidt. And I guess my comment there would be that for the outreach programs where they're utilizing the van for a specific event, it seems to make sense what Councillor Fisher is proposing. However, if it's going to be utilized 2 days a week, then it doesn't at $200 a pop, because you'd be looking at about $800 per month. However, if a courier service was feasible at a lower rate, then that would once again make sense if it was a hybrid type of the system, just to move the books around and rent the van to go and outreach. Councillor Garwood or Councillor Alexander, sorry, and then I'll come back to Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I actually think that Councillor Fisher's amendment is a smart, prudent way to go. It allows the library to still have the outreach programs, which I do feel are very important. I think they're great events. It allows us to get the equipment, like the tent there, the whole deal, do the outreach program. In terms of the couriering of the books, I think we've managed thus far on mileage. So I think it's probably within like our insurance policy and all that type of stuff. I also, to be honest, when we're looking at, again, this is all falling on the taxpayer, I question why we need to move books around. We're a fairly small township. I know I always come back to this. I live in Phelpston. I don't have a library I can walk to. I have to get in my car and choose one. None of them are that far. So if you want a book that's in the Elmville Library and you live in Midhurst, I don't think it's an unreasonable request that you get in your car and drive there.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Through you to CEO Delgado, you oversee the two libraries in the Minising branch. That's correct, right? How often, on a weekly basis, do you visit those locations?
As you know, my office is now based in Elmville, so I'm at Elmville almost every day. I visit Minising probably once a month. The two staff that are in Minising do work out of Elmville as well on Monday, so I touch base with them and find out if there's anything they need at that point. And Midhurst, I'm usually there once or twice a week, sometimes just popping in, sometimes for quite a few hours. We have staff that call constantly, so there's always constant contact with all the staff.
Hold on. So as you said, twice a week, a vehicle needs to be utilized to transport books, but you just told me that you're in Elmville every day. You're in Midhurst twice a week, and at least once a month, you're at the smaller branch, if you will. So would it not be smart then for you to take the books that are needed? I can't see them taking up very much room. Put them in your vehicle, just 1 second, put them in your vehicle and drive them down to the other location, being a savior to the taxpayer, I might add.
CEO Delgado.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral, and through you to Councillor Fisher. During the beginning of the pandemic, that is exactly what I did. And there are about 4 big Rubbermaid containers full of books that go out in each. So twice a week they go out. Unfortunately, my health does not allow me to lift those at the moment. And so because of that, I am not able to do that at the moment. But that's why we have strong staff who can.
Final follow on, Councillor Fisher.
So you just admitted you have strong staff that can lift it into your vehicle. And even if you were to own a van, you would still have to lift those into that vehicle. So I go back to my point. I think we can manage because we have so far. And for outreach programs, I think a van would be utilized and we could rent that for no more than $200 a session. Again, in my findings, they said phone 2 weeks in advance and you'd ensure that you had the vehicle of your liking. And I think that is a more prudent choice. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call on Clerk Ainsworth just to bring us up to speed as far as the amendment is concerned.
Thank you. So there is an amendment on the table, which would alter the main motion. So the main motion is to receive the report, the previous report, and that the library purchase the courier van in the amount of $50,000 to be funded from the discretionary capital reserve. So the amendment, the effect of the amendment would be to remove the line of purchasing the courier van and replacing it with that $3,000 be allocated to the library for the rental of a vehicle for special events in 2023. And further, that the library documents the rentals needed for 23, including costs, events, etc., for consideration of the rental costs for 2024.
Thank you. I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the amendment? Carried. Main motion as amended. Don't know what it is. Sorry. So would you please read the main motion, Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you. The main motion now would read that the report from the CEO of the Springwater Township Public Library regarding the library courier outreach van purchase dated March 15, 23 be received, and that $3,000 be allocated to the library for the rental of a vehicle for special events in 23. And further, that the library document the rentals needed for 23, including costs, events, etc., for consideration of the rental costs in 2024.
All those in favor? Carried. Okay, item 14, notices of motion. Notice of motion regarding the feasibility of municipal insurance pool, moved by Councillor Thompson. May I have a seconder to get this on the floor? Councillor Moore. The motion, whereas municipalities have seen a drastic increases in insurance rates over the past several years, and whereas the market is indicating further year-over-year rate increases due to the rising costs of claims from factors such as natural disasters, flooding, tornadoes, fires, cyber crimes, and joint and several liability. And whereas municipalities have limited options in procuring traditional insurance due to a smaller number of municipal insurance providers in the province, in turn making it difficult for municipalities to control or predict insurance costs, be it therefore resolved that council hereby authorize staff to participate in the feasibility study that is being undertaken and paid for by the County of Simcoe, and report back to council once the feasibility study has been completed. Any questions or discussions on this motion? Perfect. Call the vote. All those in favor? And carried. Notice of motion regarding the creation of a bursary program for our elementary schools in Springwater, moved by Councillor Moore. Can I have a seconder to get this on the floor? Councillor Garwood. That staff draft a policy for a bursary award program to be available to each elementary school within the township of Springwater with the following parameters. That the bursary award for each school be $100 per school year to be funded through the annual budget. That the school be required to apply for the bursary award program each year by April 1st. Rule. That the school be responsible for selecting a Springwater student to receive the award based on criteria established by the school. Are there any questions or discussions on this motion? Councillor Alexander and then Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I just have a question on the last point. If the school is choosing a student, is there a specific purpose that the student is supposed to be using the bursary for, or is it intended to be awarded to the school in honor of the student?
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Alexander. So the idea is that the $100 be used for whatever the school decides. So they already have award programs for academics. So I wasn't sure if we could use it for maybe graduation or something special that the school decided for that year, something separate to academics, maybe sports too. So that's why we left it up to the school to decide how to use the $100. But yeah, I just thought it would be a nice award to add to all of their celebration at the end of the school year.
Follow on.
Just to follow on comment. Oh, thank you for the explanation. I just was concerned that it was going to the student. But I think it's great that the school has discretionary on how they want it spent.
It does go to the student, but the school decides
What the money's being done.
how it's delegated.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Is there any need for that to be included in the motion, or are we satisfied with it the way it is? Perfect. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral, and thank you, Councillor Moore, for bringing this forward. I think it's a fantastic idea. Do we happen to know, and this is more of an open-ended question, how many elementary schools there are exactly in Springwater, just so we know the $100 times that number, just, yearly? Thank you.
My understanding is there's 5: Forest Hill, Minising, HES, Our Lady of Lourdes, and in Hillsdale, we've have the Hillsdale School, so 5. So $500. You're welcome. Anyone else? If not, then we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Carried. April Fool's Day, you know what I'm saying? That's a government ploy, I think. Notice a motion regarding the pavilion rental rate, moved by Councillor Moore. May I have a seconder to get this on the floor? Councillor Garwood. Whereas various groups utilize township pavilions for meetings, socials, and small events, and whereas groups have requested that the township review the possibility of a half-day rental rate to accommodate shorter rentals. Be it therefore resolved that bylaw 2023-017 fees and charges Schedule F be amended as follows. Add pavilion half-day, non-sport, 4 hours or less. Option at the rental rate of $33 for all township pavilion locations. Add the words non-sport to all remaining pavilion rental options. Add $165 refundable deposit requirement for all full or half-day pavilion rentals to accommodate for damage and or cleaning requirements. And further, that the bylaw be brought forward at the April 19th, 2023 regular meeting for consideration. Any questions or discussions on this motion? Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. Do we know currently, I'm assuming right now, there is no deposit required for any of our pavilion rentals. Is that correct?
I'll have to go to Theo Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, if I can defer that to maybe Manager Dean, you hopefully could provide a better answer than maybe I can.
Thank you, Manager Dean.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through yourself to Councillor Garwood, I believe it was asked that. Currently, we do not take, or historically, we have not taken security deposits on pavilion rentals.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Manager Dean. I appreciate that. And the second part of my follow-up is really more of a comment. I've had quite a few residents reach out in regards to pavilion rentals. So I think it's timely that this is coming forward, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Just my comment on that is I think it's reasonable to include a deposit. I think it's for those folks that keep things clean, it's not going to be an issue. They're going to get their $165 back, depending on how they made that payment or how they presented that deposit. It might be as simple as not cashing a check or not or refunding some money on a credit card or whatever. However, I think it's unfair when folks do utilize township facilities, leave them in a filthy condition and don't clean up after themselves, and then we're incurring costs at the taxpayers' dollars to clean it up. So I support it. CO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just further to that, just to be transparent with all members of council, it is consistent with what we do with our community halls. So any facility rentals for community halls, we do collect the security or deposit, if you will. So it would be consistent with that approach.
Perfect. Thanks ever so much. If there's no further questions or comments, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any items for future consideration that councillor wishes to present? Seeing none, then we don't have to worry about it. May I have a seconder, a mover and seconder for approval of the bylaws? Councillor Garwood, Councillor Thompson, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk, 5000-3. Sorry, am I okay? Okay, 5000-368 ZB 2022-017 Mercer, 2023-035 amend Elmvale BIA appointments bylaw 2023-023, 2023-036 lease agreement with Georgian College for Fire Station 1. Are there any questions or comments on this motion? Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I have to remove my seconder on that because I called pecuniary before. Apologies. I was quick with putting the hand up, so I'm rescinding that. Thank you.
I thank you for that. I gapped it myself. I saw Councillor Fisher had his hand up and I turned to you instead. Councillor Fisher, would you be prepared to be the seconder? Thank you ever so much. So we'll move back in there. So you are removing yourself, recusing yourself. Everyone else, all those in favor? Carried. Confirmatory bylaw, may I have a second mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Fisher, Councillor Moore. That bylaw 2023-037 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on April the 5th, 2023, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. May I have a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting? Councillor Thompson and Councillor Garwood, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 8:27 PM to meet again at a regular meeting on April the 19th, 2023 at 6:30 PM. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone.